صلى الله عليه وسلم مثل المؤمنين في ترادهم وتعاطفهم وتراحمهم مثل الجسد إذا استشكى منه عضو تداعى له سائر الجسد بالسهر والحمى أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. My dear respected brothers and sisters, our youngsters, our elders in Islam, it's a great blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gave us this tawfiq and this ability to come and pray together. And mashallah, coming here and being invited here, I'm very grateful for the administrative staff and the Imam and Sheikh Yahya for allowing me to come and speak to you. And mashallah, this gathering is so beautiful. I see so many young people here. I see so much farih and khushi and what we call happiness here. And mashallah, it reminds me as if we're at Eid Salah. And that's the beauty of this day. And that's how this day should be revered and honored. And the reverence for the Jummah is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned out of all of the salats, out of all of the ibadat, He said, فَاسْعَوْا إِلَى ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَذَرُوا الْبَيْعَ. That hasten and rush towards the remembrance of Allah ta'ala on the day of Jummah. So the maqam in the place and the status of the Jummah salat is the best salat. It is the highest maqam. It is the afdal salat. It is the salat that is on the best of days, which is on the Jummah. So this is the best of the days and it's the best prayer. And so for this we show reverence. And for this we put on our best clothes. And we hasten towards the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says that after the prayer, that when the prayer is done, فَإِذَا قُضِيَ لِلصَّلَاةِ فَانْتَشِرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَابْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ. The rizq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sustenance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us, this comes from the Jummah prayer. It comes from attending the Jummah prayer. So all the young students here, mashallah, that are coming and they're thinking to themselves, how can I make paper and how can I make my money? This is how you make your money. This is how Allah ta'ala gives you rizq. Allah gives you rizq by coming to His house and praying. Allah gives you rizq by coming to the Jummah prayer. Because Allah is the one who ultimately will give us sustenance. Inna Allaha huwa razzaqu zul quwwatil mateen. Allah is the one that is all the sustenance. So when you're looking around and you're saying to yourselves that I want to be able to make a good living for myself, I want to go and maybe study something and become a doctor, or maybe I want to take some money and put it into some thing like a Bitcoin and make money because I want to have a Lambo. No, you're going to get your Lambos and all these other things by obeying the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah putting barakat, putting blessings and in your rizq, in your sustenance. And that comes when you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That comes when you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see, one of the ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cuts and makes less the rizq, the sustenance of a person, is when they engage in disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't then give them the full allotment and put the barakat in the wealth. In fact, there's a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that says that a man, right, he's disheveled. Disheveled means that his hair is messy. Like when a person is not able to sleep in a condition where he wakes up and he can take a shower and groom himself and comb his hair. So he's disheveled. There's dirt on his face. There's dirt on his clothes. And he raises his hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asking. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rejects his dua because his sustenance, what he was eating is haram. And the way he earns is haram. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam added that even though this person was deserving of the dua of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning he was actually one of the people who met the condition that his dua should be accepted and Allah should give him and grant him. But Allah didn't grant him because that person is eating from haram and his wealth and his sustenance that he's earning, his livelihood is coming from haram. So that's how important it is for us to increase our wealth by doing the things that are pleasurable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and following in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And my dear respected brothers and our sisters and our youth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made a very special maqam, place for the youngsters, the shabab of this ummah. The young people have a very special status in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, one of the great trials and tribulations that's happening in the world today, and all of you know it, is the fitna of the Dajjal, the Antichrist, or the end times of the the deceptions and the deceivers and the people who lead astray people. And most of you, mashallah, I know you probably already watched some of these videos on YouTube and they tell you, oh, the Dajjal is here and all this. I don't know about all of that. But I do know that Rasulullah ﷺ gave us plenty of prophecies of things that would come before the end, such as the people would lie, and the liars would be considered the truthful people, and the people that are truthful would be outcast and be considered the bad of the people. These things happen today. And that the parents and the children would be disobedient to the parents. These things happen today. And that many, many sins would be opened. These things happen today. Rasulullah ﷺ said that in order that we protect ourselves from such trials and tribulations, we recite Surah Kahf on Fridays. Right? Surah Kahf is a protection against the big fitna of Dajjal. And in Surah Kahf, the first story that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in this surah is about young people who defended their faith against a tyrant king. Allahu Akbar. The first story that Allah talks about in this magnificent surah that is considered a protection against the fitnas of the end times is the story of young people who defended their faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala against an oppressive king. And Allah elevated their status so high that not only did He reveal the story of them for all of us, not only did He put the fadila of the surah that it protects you, but Allah also even elevated the dog that was their companion, that he'll be their companion in Jannah. Such sincerity these young people had in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they are immortalized in the Quran, and their honor is preserved in the Quran. And can you imagine what type of maqam and what type of status that these young people will have in the Jannah? It'll be of the highest status. See, Allah Ta'ala used young people many times in the Quran as examples. Age is nothing but a number, they say. Age won't determine your status in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh, I have to wait till I'm retired, 63, 67, before I can get close to. No. Young people, their status is very high in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the young people are going through things which trials and tribulations, which the older generation, all of us that are older, that we're not going through. And it happens with every generation. What you go through and what your experiences are today and the trials that you're going through, some of them, I can't fathom them because I did not go through those same things. What we are as elders and spokespersons of the community are mentors and people that are well-wishers for you. But the trials that you are going through, Allah knows best what you are going through. But never despair. لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله. Never despair of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah Himself says, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah does not give you any hardship except that which you can bear. Every trial and tribulation a young person goes through in this country, Allah has put the strength and the courage in your heart that you can face it. Just like the same way that Allah put the trial and the courage in these youngsters who stood up against the king, who was demanding that they leave their obedience to Allah and to worship Him. Allah Ta'ala put in their hearts the strength to resist this. And Allah gave us the example of this. Allah gave us more examples like this. In the Surah Buruj in the Quran, وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْبُرُوجِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْمَوْعُودِ وَشَاهِدِ وَمَشْهُودِ قُتِلَ أَصْحَابُ الْأُخْدُودِ. These people called the Ashab al-Ukhdud, these people were the people who were following the way of a young boy who recognized Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was a boy and a king. And this boy, he was sent by the king to go learn magic from a magician. And every day when he used to go to the magician, he used to stop by a monk who used to say, boy, let me teach you something. So he used to stop by him. And he started learning about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the king sent him to go learn magic, but instead he went to go learn Tawheed, oneness of Allah. So eventually he would end up late to the magician. So the magician used to get upset and mad at him and then torture him. And then the king would beat him. And so he went to the monk and said, I can't come here. He said, why? He said, because when I come, I'm late to go to that magician that the king has ordered me to go. And that causes me problems. So he said, and vice versa, then I get late from him back to the king. Then that causes me problems. He said, that's not a problem. When you go to the magician after you see me, you tell him that the king held you up. And when you go to the king after and he asks why you're late, you say the magician held me up. And so he did this and he learned Tawheed. Eventually, it came to a time when he met a monster. It was a big beast. And he said to himself, now is the time for me to test that is it Allah, this Allah that I've learned about, or is it the magic that's going to help me? So he took a rock and he said, by the grace of Allah, if Allah, you are true, then you defeat this beast for me. And he threw it and that beast died. So now, as a young man, he's very excited, but he doesn't know what he's got himself into. And that's what happens with our young people. We don't know sometimes the things that we get into. Right? So he comes back to the monk and says that, this is the story that happened to me today. And the monk immediately said, oh, you went through this? Subhanallah. What you're about to go through, I won't be able to deal with that. Because he recognized the greatness of this boy and how Allah has accepted him to do something. He said, you're going to go through stuff now. Hold steadfast. So eventually, this boy was given many miracles by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was able to cure people. He was able to cure certain things. Eventually, there was a man in the court of the king. And the court of that king, the man was blind. And this king, he was also an oppressive king. He believed in magicians and he believed in, the worship of himself. So this man who was blind, he also heard about this boy who was given the ability to cure people. But what? Bi-iznillah, with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he would give da'wah to the people. And then he would say, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that's giving you the cure. And then he would make dua and Allah would give them cure. So the people started to actually believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This one boy in a kingdom of all non-believers was slowly converting and making people believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of his piety. And this is in the Quran. Again, these stories are not just out there. This is in the Quran. Then, eventually, that man that was blind in the court of the king, he came to the boy. And the boy then made dua to Allah, and that man's eyesight came back. Now he went back to the king, and now he can see. And so the king became very suspicious. What? You were just blind yesterday, but now you can see? So he said, how did you get this? And that man said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to me. Oh, this enraged the king. How can you say that in front of me? And so he tortured him until he found out it was from the boy. He said, this is the same boy that I taught to go learn magic. What is he doing? So he called him. And the same situation, he tortured him until he revealed it was the monk. And then eventually he dispersed of the monk too. He made the monk martyred and sent him back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now there's a dilemma, a predicament. The boy has faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but now he's being oppressed. And now it's a matter of what is more important to me, the oneness and the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or this wretched king. And so now the king said, you either renounce this new faith or I'm going to get rid of you as well. So he said, I will not renounce this, because he had belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you have to understand that these aren't Instagram stories. These aren't things that are scripted in a movie. 2,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, when these events were happening, no one was saying to himself that, well, I'm doing this so that someone will remember me in the future. No, they're doing it with sincerity for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah is the one who preserved these stories. Allah is the one who preserved this history. So that's the sincerity of the intention of this young man. And so he told him, he said, I'm not going to renounce Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said, take him to the highest mountain and, scare him. And if he renounces this faith, bring him back now. But if he doesn't renounce Allah, this Allah that he believes in now, you get rid of him off the mountain. So the army of the king took him to the top of the mountain. And when they took him to the top of the mountain, he made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah ta'ala made it that all those people, they fell off the mountain, and he came walking back to the king. And the king saw him and said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "You can't kill me because I made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." So he told again another group of his army. He said, "Take him into the ocean and threaten to drown him. If he renounces Allah, bring him back. If he does not, you get rid of him." Same situation. They took him into the ocean. And then again he made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then again saved him, drowned the people, and he came back walking to the king. And now he's defeated 2 armies. And now the king is also becoming stressed because the people around him are starting to lose faith in him. That, you say that you're such a great king and you're a god and all this other, blasphemous things, but this boy is defeating your armies and he's a prisoner of yours. So he said to him, he said, "What do you want?" He said, "Listen, you can't kill me. You can't kill me," because the faith was hard. He said, "You can't kill me. There's only one way that you'll be able to eliminate me." He said, "What's that?" He said, "You gather all the people of your kingdom together. You gather them all together. And you bring me. And you tie me. That's fine if you want to execute me. And before you execute me and shoot me with an arrow, you must say, 'In the name of the Lord of this boy.' In the name of Allah, the Lord of this boy." So, king, obviously, human faculty, people are not that smart as they seem. Anyone who challenges Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually very low in intellect. Anyone who denies the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and thinks there's some other solution is very low intellect. And you will always be able to see the flaws in those people. And that's why it's always so important for us to understand the concept, especially as young people in this society where everyone's propagating all sorts of weird things to you, right? There's a God, there's a goddess, there's this, there's that, there's, man in the sky, pie and fly, all these things. This is all the symptom of low intellect. But the students of Islam and those of intellect, they understand that Tawheed is the perfect concept of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because it's revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said to him, "You have to say in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." So then he said, "Okay, that's what I need to do." Not realizing he did this, and the boy passed away. Everyone who witnessed it accepted the shahada of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and said, "I'm on the religion of that boy." And when they're on the religion of the boy, now there's a big problem in the kingdom. Because now everyone believes in the one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then this king threatened, "I will annihilate and get rid of all of you if you believe in one Allah." But because the people saw what this boy had done, they refused to compromise and sacrifice their oneness and their belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so he created a great cauldron of fire, and he made them all either renounce the faith or jump into the fire and die. And not a single one of them rejected this boy. One by one, they said, "Fine, I'm going to go meet Allah. I'll go meet Allah with this boy." And they went until the very end. At the very end, there was a mother, and she had a baby. And because the love of the mother for the child, she hesitated to jump in because she was worried about this is going to be such an awful thing. But the child then spoke to her and said, "Oh, my mother, do not fear. This is the way to Jannah. This is the way to paradise." And she also jumped in. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave the story in lieu of the surah Buruj. My dear respected brothers, the youth are immortalized in the Quran. The youth are the future of Islam. All you young people here, you are the ones who will inherit this religion. You are the ones that will propagate the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So reflect to yourself for a second and say, what am I doing for my deen? What am I doing to make myself closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And what goals and ambitions do I have that will promote and establish the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because I want to be in a place in Jannah with those youth that gave everything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those examples are not just there for stories. Those examples are there to show you that when you sincerely do something for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the end result of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will use you, that's in Allah's hands. And He can use you to spread hidayah and guidance and good morals and values and ethics all across. And you won't even know when you started, where you ended up, and how Allah Ta'ala used you to do so many great things. So my message to you is that this is the same message Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave the Sahaba. This is the message that he gave the youngsters, that you stand forward for the deen of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, and Allah will use you. And there's countless examples in the companions of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, young men, women, boys that were very much in the front line of Islam, and because of their efforts, because of what sacrifices they made, not only did they meet the ultimate and attain the ultimate success of the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they also attained the ultimate success of the highest levels of Jannah and the highest and closest stations and positions with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So reflect upon this thing. This time is very precious. You don't be young twice. You don't get to be young twice. All the 13-year-olds and 12-year-olds, they wish they're 16 so they can get their driver's license. And then all the 16-year-olds, they wish they're 21 so that, they can travel without parents. And then everyone who's 21 wants to be 25 so they can get the rental car without a co-signer. And then all of us that are in 40 wish we're 20 again. So as we get older, we want to be younger. And as we're younger, we want to be older. What we're saying is that this youth is a very important time. Use it very preciously. You won't get it back. Right? You won't get it back again. Right now you're able to just get up and run and play basketball. You're able to play sports. And you wake up next day and you're ready to go again. When you're 30 and you're 40, you're going to have to stretch. And then after you play one solid game, you might have to rest for a few days before you can play again. So this is the time of effort. This is the time that you have to make yourself. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of you and make it that you continue to frequent the masjid. Continue to join the center. Make this place a place of example for the Muslims and the non-Muslims. Bring your friends. Come and pray together. Play together. Build a community of youngsters. And seek guidance from your teachers and from the shuyukh that are here. And be attached. Don't let yourself become detached. Because if you become detached, then you are the one sheep that the wolf is out to get of shaitan. And that is the one that is the most vulnerable. So keep yourself attached. May Allah Ta'ala make it so that all of you are used for this effort of deen. And may Allah Ta'ala make it that all of you are inspired to do something great for this deen. And make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our teachers used to tell us, oh Allah, make me exceptional and use me to do something exceptional. There's nothing wrong with having lofty goals in this deen. There's nothing wrong with having lofty goals and doing something for the khidmat of deen. So Allah Ta'ala accept. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور. نحمده ونصلي على رسول الكريم أما بعد فقد قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله لا ينظر إلى جسامكم ولا إلى صوركم ولكن ينظر إلى قلوبكم وأعمالكم. عباد الله رحمكم الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم واشكروا على نعمته يزدكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون وأقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي